And like, I'm sitting there and no joke, the girl looks at me and she's like, oh, it's Friday night. We have an orgy every Friday night. You're welcome to join in. Like, dead serious. And I'm just like, what?
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 New Jersey punk rock scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Bigwig is a punk rock band from New Jersey who formed in 1995 and are still gracing clubs around the U.S. and Canada today. I talk more about them, but that'll happen in the Tom Petty interview that's going to launch in a couple weeks. For now, I want to introduce Michael Cipriano, or Monkey, as he is known by everyone. He got the gig after being asked by then guitarist Josh if he wanted to come on the road with them. He said yes, went on the road with them for many years, has a ton of stories, and now 20 years later, he's being interviewed for my podcast. Lucky man. In this interview, we talk about how back in the day, a can of food would take money off the cost of a show, E-Town Concrete getting him into a show for free, how he became Bigwig's roadie, how Josh from Bigwig worked as a taxi driver for Monkey's dad, how his troubles with the law added issues for him getting into Canada when he was on the road with Bigwig, how he got rejected at the border with $30 in his pocket and no cell phone, his orgy story, which you might have heard from the preview this week, the story about John from Bigwig getting left behind at a truck stop, being a drummer for Jettison, our thoughts on Pennsylvania people in general, stories about Fletcher from Pennywise, how being on tour has changed his life, and a ton more. Before we begin, thank you to all the people who donated money last week to the podcast. If you'd like to keep this thing alive, then go to thiswasthescene.com and there's a big button there that just says donate. It basically helps me pick up the cost on hosting this thing. Now, I get it. This thing's about 5 weeks in, and it's kind of ballsy to be asking people to donate money, but I don't know. Fuck it. Also, if you're bored this evening, then check out the Forever Endeavor reunion show at the Debonair Music Hall in Teaneck, New Jersey. If you're listening to this podcast and the date is not April 20th, 2018, then you missed it and don't show up there. Unless there's another good show, but you missed the one I just talked about. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who you think would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Hello, Mr. Monkey.
What's up, man?
How are you, even though we've been talking for 10 minutes and just pretending like we just started?
I'm good. You know how I am.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking for 10 minutes. No, I'm good.
Where in Jersey are you living right now?
Right now I live in Denellen. It's like by like Somerville, Bridgewater area.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Right off 22.
Okay. Because you grew up in Burnersville, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Part of the Burnersville kids.
It's really weird. Like I mean, it's not weird, but I grew up in Basking Ridge, but I hung out with everyone from Burnersville, and actually I moved to Basking Ridge when I was like 12 or 13, and I moved from Union,
Okay.
which kind of is cool, I guess, because what we're going to talk about, you know, it kind of plays into that, my moving from Union to Basking Ridge, and how I like reconnected with kids from Union that I went to like elementary school with, like through the scene, you know.
So talk to me about that. So my first question is it's always like what got you involved in punk rock to begin with?
I was a big skater back in the day, in like middle school, junior high school, and I always listened to like metal. Even when I was a kid, like 8, 9 years old, I was listening to like Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard and Motley Crue and all that glam stuff, you know.
Yep.
And then, you know, I went to grunge from there with like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and stuff. But I would see in the back of Thrasher magazine ads for like T-shirts for all these bands that I never heard of, but the names sounded really cool. You know what I mean? But they were all like alternative and like punk bands. And they weren't on the radio, and they weren't like mainstream. And there was this weird, like, it was kind of like a mystery to me. Like, who are these bands? You know, like, what is this in the back of this skater? It must be cool because it's in Thrasher.
Yeah.
So I think I bought like, I want to say it was NoFX, Liberal Animation, maybe, just because I saw NoFX in the Thrasher magazines, and I bought it, and I actually didn't like it at first. It was kind of funny. I didn't like it. And I didn't like Liberal Animation. And then I had like I think it was a Thrasher skate video. It was called The Truth Hurts. And I think that, NoFX Sold Out was on that song. It was on that video. And I liked the song, and it was NoFX. So I bought White Trash Tubes and a Bean. I like that. And then after that, like I started going to, I was really lucky to grow up where I grew up. Like a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's in the boonies and you're like in the woods, but we actually had a really good, thriving local scene. Even when I was like 12, 13 years old in middle school, like the Bouncing Souls are from my hometown. Like not a lot of people know that because they say they're from New Brunswick. And
I just found that out because I just interviewed Anthony Annoyance, and he said that his brother had known those guys, and they started off in Bernardsville, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I was like, what the fuck? So that's crazy. Yeah, but go on.
They all went to my high school. Like they're older than me. They were out of high school by the time I was in high school, but I would see their stickers all over town, and they were little like hand-drawn black and white stickers in the pizza shop and all this stuff. And then there was like there was a local scene. They were older than me when I was in middle school. They were like high school. There was a lot of high school punk bands. So I actually went to see the Bouncing Souls in Bernardsville. I was so young, man. I didn't even like know what I was seeing. You know, I was just like, oh, cool. There's like a high school band playing in this church here. Like, we were skate kids, you know, just skating around town.
Yeah.
We went in the show and like it got shut down and we left. And then years, you know, not years later, but a couple years later, when I really got into punk, it was like, oh, the Bouncing Souls. They were on BYO at that point, and everybody was like stoked on them. And I was like, oh, that band was from Basking Ridge. But anyway.
Yeah, no, keep going. That's good.
Going to shows, like I went to there was a battle of the bands in the local town park when I was a freshman in high school, and this band One Nature played, and they like blew my mind. Like I had never heard anything like that. They were very melodic, like kind of like 7 Seconds type stuff, like more melodic 7 Seconds, you know.
Yep.
And like I had never heard anything like that. I had heard No Effects, but they weren't like No Effects. They were a lot different, and they were from this area too. And so through them, I saw them at that show, and then they were like, "Hey, we're playing, you know, I think it was Obsessions in Randolph or something."
Yeah.
They're like, "We're playing Obsessions next month, you know," and I would beg my mom to buy me tickets and take me and my friends to the show. And it got snowed out. I remember that. It got canceled, and I was pissed off because my mom wouldn't drive me to the show because there was a snowstorm. And then the show wound up getting canceled anyway. So, like, but then they played. I found out that they played the New Providence American Legion Hall, like, coming up. And we went to that show, and that just, like, I saw so many bands play there. We started going, me and all the kids from Joystick, like, those kids all went to my high school. Those were, like, we all were in, like, the same crew. We all kind of, all the same grade, all the same age.
Mm-hmm.
So we all started going to the shows. Those guys formed Joystick and started playing the New Providence American Legion Hall shows.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was friends with them, you know, I was always there. And then we all kind of got to know that whole crew. And then from there, it just, you know, basically because Joystick started and I kind of like tagged along with them as their like boy or whatever. And then so as they started playing shows, I got to meet more people and start meeting more bands and seeing more bands in that like NJPP scene at the time, you know?
Yeah. Actually, I don't even think this is kind of jumping forward, but I don't even remember really meeting you back then in the scene. I feel like we met each other like more towards the end when like early 2000, I think, or like when you were doing Day at the Fair. I think that's when I really, because I always heard about you. Through Bigwig. You and Horace were always the names getting thrown around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who the fuck are these guys? But I'm sure we like ran into each other at shows all the time. I just didn't know you.
I think we met, or I don't know if maybe it wasn't you. I distinctly remember talking to Chris Barker for the first time when you guys played. I think it was Congress of Cow, maybe.
Yeah. With
Joystick somewhere, but maybe I didn't meet you. But I knew, like, we definitely had, like, yeah, like you knew, I knew who you were. You know, we ran in the same crowds, but I don't think that we like actually ever like talked or anything until like that time that you're saying, like after the Bigwig stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we probably would. I know there's one time we played a Bernardsville show, and then we all went to that. What is that? The shopping center where the Dunkin' Donuts was that Steve wrote Dunkin' Donuts about.
Yeah, was that Congress of Cow?
I think at that time we were Lanemeyer because Congress of Cow played a couple. Like we got into the scene as Congress of Cow, and then we broke up. It's funny. We broke up at a Brian Fallon show that he put on in Mount Arlington or Dover, like one of those. Where the hell was it? I think it was Dover. But he put on a show, and this is when he was like Brian, when he was like Fat Brian.
Yeah.
and I remember we showed up there, and then that was Jeff's last show, and then after that we got Alan and Sean and all that. But but I don't think we played any Bernardsville shows until we were Lanemeyer.
Okay, so I definitely remember that show. I think that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think
it was when One Cool Guy played. It was the first time I saw them play, and I was like, "This is hilarious. These guys are like rapping. This is amazing."
Yeah, I do remember that show. I see. Maybe you're right. I think that might have been the show I actually talked to Chris at. But I knew who you guys were as Congress of Cow because of Joystick. Because like when they started, you guys were just starting, and I remember you guys played shows together. And then like when you guys turned into Lanemeyer, I was like, okay, those are the Congress of Cow kids. That's their new band. So, and then I think I got to know you guys as Lanemeyer.
I would love it how we always called each other by the city and like the kids. It would be like the Burnsville kids.
Yeah.
You know, the like, or we'd get everyone always had, and I still, even the people that I talk to now, I've been interviewing, I call them by their first and their band name.
Yep. Totally.
So it was like, or Anthony from Annoyance Zine. It was like Anthony Annoyance, and then Josh Humble and Tom Bigwig, you know. And
that's so funny.
I got on the phone with Heath from Midtown, and when he was like, I think he was the second interview. And
Heath Midtown?
Yeah. And I called him Heath Midtown. I was like, dude, I've never said your name out loud, but I think it's Saraceno. And he's like, yeah, that's right.
That is true. Dude, that's true. I don't think anybody would know him other than Heath Midtown. Yeah. If you said Heath Saraceno, only like a few people would know who you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I'd be like Midtown. Like, oh, God, Midtown, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so your first show technically was a Bouncing Souls show then when you were 12.
Technically, but I don't really consider that my first show because I didn't really go there with the intention of seeing any band, like a specific band. I didn't know what I was doing.
So what was the show the first show that you went there?
I would say my first real show would have been One Nature and a band called Punch Buggy. Okay. Which Josh Farrell from Bigwig was in Punch Buggy. Wow, that was the band he was in before Punch Buggy. Yeah. And I want to say, actually, I feel like John's band previous to Bigwig may have played that show too, but I'm not sure. The only bands I remember, actually, I think a band called the Halflings played too. I think it was One Nature, Punch Buggy, and the Halflings, and there was probably other bands I can't remember. I remember those three bands.
Yeah, every time I do these interviews, I always have the North Jersey Pop Punk page open, and I'm just, I'm always scanning through it as someone's talking and looking at all these flyers to see, if any of these pop up as like, oh my God, there's the flyer, and you just said that band name,
I don't know if that would be in there. I mean, I've looked. It may be. You know what? Because John from Clincher posted a lot of old New Providence Legion Hall flyers in there, so it may be in there, but I don't know. I remember it was a benefit for Habitat for Humanities, and it was really funny because it was like $6, $5 with a can of food, Yep. And I'm like, Mom, can you drive me to this show and can I have a can of food? And she's like, what? Like what? I was like, oh, I don't know. They say it's $1 cheaper if you bring food for the homeless or something. She's like, okay. Like,
yeah.
So it was really funny though explaining that to my mom. My mom did not understand why I needed to bring a can of food to a concert in a Legion Hall.
That was a big thing too. A lot of people would always do that, and it worked really well.
It did.
I don't think I actually played for any. I don't think I ever paid for a fucking show.
Really?
I think I paid for a couple in the beginning. I mean, I must have, but I mean, I think we just played so many freaking shows that was typically how I would get there. We technically would always be playing so many shows that we would just show up, and that's how I got to see so many of them. But there'd be. I don't even think I went to. I would go out, and then we became friends with bands. Like I would go out and support them and things like that. But
being that I wasn't in a band, I did go to a lot of shows just as someone that's not in a band.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because like in the beginning I did pay, but then as I got older, I was always with a band that was playing, so I never wound up paying because it's like, oh, he's with us. What I mean?
But you were that friend that was like, get me on the list.
Yeah. No, it wasn't even that. It was just like, hey, you want to come with us?
Oh, okay.
You want to come with us? Yeah, all right. And then I'm like with them. It wasn't even like, hey, can you guys get me? There was no guest list for like hall shows, I don't think, was there?
No, like sometimes they would give us a couple people to get in. I know that's how a lot of our friends would come. They'd be like, well, we can't get on the list. I'm like, dude, just pay the fucking $5 for Christ's sake. Like,
I remember
here.
Yeah, you like You just pick up a drum or something and walk in.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, here, carry this guitar. All right, you're in. Cool.
You're the roadie.
It's actually, you want to know what's really funny about that? I, like I said, like, those shows, like, as I got older, I very rarely paid for because I was always the roadie or with the band. But when I would go to, like, hardcore shows and stuff, I paid because I didn't know anyone. I wasn't ever with a band. Like, I didn't know really a lot of those kids because I didn't go to those shows too often. But when I did go, I had to pay. And one time I went to see, this is really funny. It was at Middlesex County College. I can't remember who was playing, but E-Town Concrete was playing. And I was sitting outside, and the dude, like, walks up to me. He's like, hey, you want to get him for free? I'm like, yeah. He's like, here, carry this keyboard. So I just, like, walked in with the E-Town Concrete's keyboard and put it down. And he's like, all right, cool. I was like, sweet, dude. You just saved me, like, $12. I'm not even here to see your band, but all right, you're cool with me.
Oh, my God, that's amazing. You're like, your band is awful.
Yeah, like, I probably liked them back in the day, but
I never actually listened. I just remember Casey, who was Casey Morgan. One time he was making a joke and goes, "It's my impersonation of E-Town Concrete." He's pretending they're on stage at Warped Tour. He's like, hey, we're E-Town Concrete. Where's everyone going?
Yeah, because they like headlined or something. I remember that.
Oh,
E-Town
so
Concrete's
funny.
funny. I can understand why people don't like them, but I don't have anything against them.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've never. Paid, honestly, I hope they don't listen.
Anyway,
to this.
yeah, there's gonna be like a gang war now.
I know,
And
right?
No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. What? So what? Actually, okay. So how did you start roading? Because everyone who I'm interviewing has had some part in the scene, where it was either they were a band, they were a zine, and your big contribution, besides going to shows and fucking singing along and supporting it, but to me, and, this is a passion project that I put together, and
right.
It's I'm talking to a bunch of people who recorded the music and contributed, but I always remembered your name was always, you were the roadie, and it was usually like for Bigwig. So how did you start roadieing, and who was the first band?
It was Bigwig.
Okay.
I mean, well, the first band that I went on tour with was Bigwig.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd help my friends' bands locally, but it was Bigwig, and that happened because, like I said, I started going to the New Providence shows, and that band Punch Buggy, Josh was in the band, and me and the Joystick Kids became really big fans of Punch Buggy. We got to be friends with Josh, and then Josh quit and started Bigwig, or whatever happened. I don't even remember how that went down, but whatever. He was in Bigwig, and then it was like, okay, cool, that's Josh's new band, Bigwig. So we became friends with them, and they started playing the New Providence Legion Hall a bunch. And we kept going to shows, and, every time we go to shows, we wind up, like, talking to one of them, and we all kind of became friends. And this is kind of funny the way this went down. So at the time, like, right before I went on my first tour with them, my dad at the time had a taxi company.
Okay.
Right? So Josh from Bigwig was, like, living in my town, I think, at the time, and he needed a job. So my dad hired him as a taxi driver.
Oh my God.
Right? So Josh is driving taxis for my dad. Mind you, like, this isn't like a legit business. Like, this is like my house, and like my parents' phone is like the taxi phone. So Josh would, like, come over my house and hang out and wait there for a taxi call. So me and him, of course, became real good friends because he was at my house every friggin' day hanging out. And one day he was just like, hey, man, we're going up to Canada for 2 weeks. We need someone to do merch. Do you want to go? And I was like, hell yeah. And that was, like, right out of high school. I think that was October. I think I graduated in June, and that was October of the same year.
Wow.
And it was, yeah. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to go.
What year did you graduate?
98.
Oh, okay. So
should have been 97, but
oh, okay.
It was 98, yeah.
So you guys, because I know Canada was basically like Bigwig's home when they would go on tour. That was where they would just crush it up there. And I think they still do, actually.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
But what was that first tour like?
Well, it was funny because it was very awkward for me at first because, like I said, like, I knew all those guys, but, like, the only one I had ever really spent any time with other than, like, at shows, like, hey, dude, what's up, like, whatever, was Josh. Mm-hmm. So, like, I can't remember. I think I went to John's house with Josh, and then maybe Tom came and picked us up with the van from wherever he was coming from. But I remember it being like, oh, and we had to go to Pennsylvania to pick up Matt. That's right. So it was like the first like hour or two in that van, I was like really quiet, and like I remember being really like intimidated.
Yeah.
Like, yo, like I'm on, yeah, because I only knew Josh. I didn't know those other guys. You know what I mean? So I was like, and they were like a big band to me at the time. You know, like it was like, oh, these guys are like the biggest band out of New Jersey punk rock right now. You know what I mean? And here I am like going on tour with them in a van. But that like, but the funniest part about that is that first tour. So when I was a kid, you know what? I just turned 18. When I was 18, I got in a little trouble with the police, and this was before like I toured with Bigwig, right? I got in a little trouble. I got in like a fight with somebody, and it was in high school thing, and it was stupid, and I got in trouble. And so when I went to go to Canada with them, like we had to have visas and stuff like that to go there legally.
I think I remember this story. Go on.
So like to get a visa, they have to do a background check. So the guys in the band were really worried that because he had that, you know, Tom asked me, do you have like a record, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I got in trouble like this. And he's like, oh shit. So they were really worried. So what we did was I took a Greyhound bus. The first time I went, actually, Josh was dating a girl that lived in Burlington, Vermont. That's right. The first time I went, Josh was dating a girl that lived in Burlington, Vermont. We drove to Burlington, Vermont. And then she drove me over the border, and they drove separately. So when we got to the border crossing, it was just like, oh, she's like, oh, we're just going in for the day so that he could see Canada. He's my friend visiting. So they were like, oh, okay, no problem. And so it turned out that when Bigwig got to the border, the dude, because they had my name, like Border Patrol had my name. So they were like, where's Michael Cipriano, which is my real name. And Bigwig's like, oh, he didn't wind up coming. And the guy was like, good, because he wasn't going to get in anyway. So
holy shit.
That's what they said. I obviously wasn't there for that, but so every time after that I would go with Bigwig to Canada, I'd have to take a bus. I'd take a bus from New York to Montreal.
That's what I heard.
I would just say that I'm just going in for like a day to visit somebody, and then I would, you know, obviously not do that.
So yeah, I don't know how that whole story got around, because again, I always heard about you, especially the name stood out, and
yeah.
Someone told me that story one time. I was like, that's amazing. Or there was another story about getting the merch over or something. There was like they couldn't, or that could have been another band, like, because I know Canada would try to tax your merch, which was bullshit.
Yeah, we got fucked with real bad. I remember coming back, they made us like, I think they made us sort all the shirts, and every single one of them that didn't say made in the USA, we had to pay, or made in Canada, we had to pay a tax on, because some of them, or no, it was made in the USA. It was coming back into the country from Canada. They hit us, and they made us go. They went through every shirt and looked at every single tag, and whichever ones weren't made in the US, they taxed us on.
Oh my god.
There was another time where I actually got like turned away from the border, like they wouldn't let me in. And I was in Vancouver. I was going from Seattle to Vancouver, and I got caught at the border. The guy would not let me in. He was like, I took a bus, you know,
yeah.
And they were like, and I was going from Seattle to Vancouver. So they're like, why? Like, if they like look at my license, they're like, you have a New Jersey driver's license. You're on a Greyhound bus from Seattle to Vancouver, and you have $30 in your wallet. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going to visit a friend. And they're like, well, for how long? And I was like, 4 days. They're like, you have $30. I was like, well, yeah, because I'm like not thinking like, oh God, like so stupid. I should have thought more about that. So then they like searched my stuff, and I had the laminate. We were on tour with the Vandals, and I had the laminate. It was so buried, dude. I had never had a problem at the border, and I had done this a million times, but never over there. I never got searched, never nothing. So like I put the laminate in like a pocket in like a pair of pants and rolled it up, and it was like all the way in the bottom of my bag, and they found it, and the guy was like, what's this? And I was like, oh, my friend's band from Jersey, they played in Seattle last night, they're playing in Vancouver tonight, they gave that to me and said if I want to go to the show I can get in with this. And the guy was like, yeah, right, like you're on tour with them, I'm not stupid, like you're not getting in. And they made me go to the American side of the border, and they put me on a Greyhound bus back to Seattle.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and it was crazy, man. Like I literally had $30, and this was before cell phones. So like The only person on that tour that had a cell phone was the Vandals tour manager. That's it. Nobody else had a cell phone on that tour. So like, and I didn't have a cell phone, and I had $30. So,
Oh my God.
So I like called my mom. I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't know what to do. My mom winds up calling the Vandals tour manager because I was like, I have $30. Like, I'm not gonna go buy a calling card, and I can't make a collect call to a cell phone. I'm like, you got to call this guy. As embarrassing as this is, you got to call him and tell him.
This is like, Monkey's mother.
Yeah, right. You know, but that was the only thing I could do. Like, how was I supposed to get in touch with anyone to let them know what happened? And so she like, my mom called the guy and whatever. And what wound up happening was my sisters had a friend that had just moved out to Seattle, and my mom called her, and my sister's friend's mom came and picked me up at the bus station in Seattle, gave me like $100 and then paid for a hotel room for me, which was at the same hotel we had stayed in the night before, because that was like the only place I knew. I had never been to Seattle in my life before. I was like, I don't know where the fuck I am. Like, and so I went back to the hotel. I spent the night in the hotel. And then the next day, Matt from Bigwig called the room because I had, you know, my mom had given the Vandals tour manager my info. So Matt called and he was like, I have a friend that moved out to Seattle from Pennsylvania. I grew up with her. You can go to her house. Like, this is her address. Just take the bus. Like, figure it out. So I was like, oh, all right. So I'm like trying to figure out, like, I asked the front desk, like, they, you know, which bus I need to take to get to wherever the address was. And she tells me, oh, it's across the street. Get on that one. So I get on the bus, dude. And no joke, like, I'm on the bus for like a half hour. And the guy's like, last stop. And it's like, not my stop. And I'm like, what happened to this stop? And he's like, this bus doesn't go there. You needed to get on the other bus.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God. And then he's like, I'm like, where do I go? He's like, you have to walk here and do this. And then I was like, screw this. So I found a taxi. I was like, just take me to this address. And I got there and it was like so shady because like nobody was home. And I'm like, I'm not just going to walk in this girl's house. Like, this is weird. Like, I don't know anyone here. Like, so I'm like just sitting on the porch outside, and some random dude comes home. I guess he lived there. He's like, "What's up, man?" And you know, I told him what happened. And it, this is a really funny ending to this story, though. Long story short, I wound up flying home. I didn't finish the tour, but what happened was while I was at this girl's house, like, you know, it was so awkward. It was like this girl and like two dudes that lived in this house, and it was like Matt's friends from Pennsylvania. And, like, I'm sitting there, and no joke, the girl looks at me, and she's like, oh, it's Friday night. We have an orgy every Friday night. You're welcome to join in. Like, dead serious. and I'm just like, what? And I'm like, and I, like, kind of laughed. And she's like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, and Bigwig was coming back because they had their van broke down, so they rented a van. And their van was getting fixed in Seattle. So they played Vancouver and then drove back to get their van. So they were coming back that day anyway. And I'm just like, oh, God, please hurry up and get here before, like, the witching hour. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to be here.
Holy shit.
These people are going to have an big orgy. Like, it was like, I'm stuck in Seattle. But anyway, yeah, I wound up flying home.
Wait, that was, like, legit, though. Like, she wasn't fucking around. She was dead.
Yeah, she was not fucking around. And when I told Matt that, he was like, oh, yeah, she's from Pennsylvania. That's all we do out there is fuck.
You see, when you said it was Matt's friend, and like, I love Matt, but it sounds like it would have been someone that he knew.
Yeah, totally.
He was fucking crazy. And
totally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because actually, my next question was gonna be, what was like a crazy story? What the craziest story is from touring? And I'm sure there's more, but hold on, I do have this triggered a question. So okay. I heard years ago that you guys were on tour, and I don't know if you were still on tour with them, but you guys left John at a gas station.
I wasn't on that tour. I could tell you the story. I know it, but I wasn't on that tour. So apparently, what happened was they were on tour with Strung Out, and they were sharing a tour bus with them, and John had because you can't shit in the tour bus, you know.
Yep.
So John had to take a dump, so he left the tour bus to go take a dump, and all he had on was like flip-flops, a pair of shorts, and a T-shirt. He had no wallet, or he might have had a wallet, but I think he had no money on him, like nothing, because he left everything in the bunk in his bus. And when he left the bunk, he pulled the curtains, and I guess they had a thing where like if the curtains are pulled, like don't disturb the person in the bunk.
Shit.
You know? So John missed bus call. The bus left while John was taking a shit, and when he came out, they had like nobody had a cell phone. So he basically, like, I think he had to call his mom to find out where the next show was, because he didn't even know where the next show was. And his mom had a copy of the itinerary. And then I guess he called her, and then I guess he like panhandled money or something through the night to buy a Greyhound ticket to the next show.
Oh my God.
And he got to the next show before the band actually got there. And then from there, and
that's what I heard. He was waiting at the club.
He was waiting. And then on their end, they had no idea that he wasn't even there until the next morning when they woke up, and they were like, "Where's John?" And then somebody opened the curtains on his bunk, and it was just his bag in there, you know.
Holy shit, dude, that's crazy.
I think John told me, and like he's gonna probably kill me for blowing up his spot, but I don't care. It's funny. he told me he cried. I'm pretty sure he told me he legitimately cried. He told me that like a homeless guy came up to him and asked him for money. And John just like broke down and was like, "I'm stuck. Like, you know, I'm in a band and they left me here where I'm supposed to be." I think he had to be in like Mankato, Minnesota the next day. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." And he said the homeless guy like gave him whatever little change he had, like, because he felt bad. But
holy shit.
He definitely cried.
Christ, man. I mean, I remember back then, I mean, there was no cell phones, and you're right.
Oh, yeah.
There were calling cards, and some calling cards would be super shitty unless you got the specific one from Walmart, which was the best one. And other ones would burn 30 minutes in like a second, and you'd pay like $10 for them or some shit.
Do you remember the dialers? Did you ever have? Matt had one. We had one. It was like a little. Do you remember like back in the day they had the it was like an address book, like a digital address book, and you put the number in it, and then if you press dial, it would make the tone of the phone number. If you held it up to like a phone, like a landline phone, if you held this thing up to the landline phone, it would like make the tone of like you dialing, and it would make the phone think that you were calling someone. And it was like an address book, but there was like a way to like hack them. So you could trick a payphone into thinking you put change in it by recording the noise of the change on this device. And then so like say I want to call you, and it's like, please insert $1. You push the button, it makes it sound like there's quarters going into the phone. So it makes like a tone on the phone to make it like tricks it to make it think you put money into the payphone when you actually didn't. And we had one of those.
Oh, really?
And that was like a lifesaver. But it was so funny because like Matt had it, and he was so paranoid he would never let anyone use it because he'd be like, "You're gonna get caught. It's gonna get taken away." It's like, dude, what do you think's gonna happen? Like, you think the police department's gonna come here and surround us at gunpoint because you're spoofing a payphone with a friggin' digital dialer? Like, come on.
Holy shit! Oh my god!
Yeah.
I would have loved to have that. That maybe would have cut into our per diem for the the $10 a day we were all living on for
yeah.
eating at Denny's at the end of the night or wherever the hell it was.
Yeah, if you were lucky.
Oh yeah, we would always man. We would always be in the morning was some fast food place like Wendy's or Carl's Jr. something like that.
Yeah.
And then at the end, if the show was good, Sean would be like, "All right, guys, we did well. We're gonna go to Denny's." We're like, "Hell yeah, Denny's!"
That's what we did too. The funny thing is with Bigwig, like we never stopped for fast food. We never ate fast food, never. Maybe Taco Bell like once in a blue moon, but that was it. Nobody ever wanted fast food in that band. But the crappy part about that is like, sometimes we go out to Denny's or whatever, but when there was no Denny's, nobody wanted fast food, so then it was like gas station food. And
man, that's the worst.
you know what that is.
Yeah, it's like chips, beef jerky, whatever the hell, whatever hot dog thing's cooking.
A quadruple, triple gulp of friggin' double caffeinated Mountain Dew, just crazy, like... Well,
that was like the time too, because I remember just thinking back at the shit that we'd eat on the road, or even after shows and local shows. I'm like, I can't even stomach that shit now.
Yeah, and I know.
It's like Christ, dude. It's like it's hard enough to not like lose weight now. I'm like close to 40, but it's just like back then. I'm like I was like a fucking rail, or like Chris was rail. I'm like eating Burger King and shit all the time, and
I know
it's like what the fuck.
It was crazy, and it was really funny because I remember like when Jeremy was in Bigwig. I remember this one tour we did. We ate like such shit, like, but we ate like gas station food, right? So it was just all salt and like crap. And I remember the whole tour, me and him were like, oh my God, like we feel so fat, like blah, 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 blah. And then we like got home and people were like, you lost weight on tour. And so what happened was we felt so fat because we were just so bloated from eating like so much salt and like shit and like drinking beer. And then once we got home and that didn't happen and the bloating went away, that it was like, oh, you guys got skinny because you like ate like shit on tour. Where you're like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Like we were just really fat from like drinking and eating salty food.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Actually, I don't think I ever met Horse.
Horse is the man. Horse is an interesting character. He's a great dude.
Is he in the Facebook group?
No, I don't think he is. I should add him.
Yeah, you should add him because I'm sure again, it was like one of those people because we all would see each other like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much every week in the summer was 3 shows with the same 10 bands and then maybe a new one, but it was.
I'm sure you knew. Like Horses wasn't from Jersey though, so he would like.
Oh, really?
I guess you would. Yeah, no, he's from Long Island.
Oh, okay.
Horse wasn't really around like when. Horse was more around with Bigwig when they like were touring a lot. Like he wasn't really around when they were playing a ton of local shows. You know, like those guys. Like even when I was with them, like we toured, like we were on tour a lot. Like they would play some shows, some like Jersey shows and PA shows in between. But
yeah,
like,
they were always on tour.
We were always out. So like Horse wasn't really around like when they were playing a ton of local shows, you know.
Oh, okay, so he would just kind of jump in the van and because when you guys were on tour, were you drum tech or were you roadie and then he?
No, I was doing merch. There was no drum tech. I was doing merch and he was like the guitar tech. But then, like, he, like, left. Some tours he didn't come on, and then I would kind of do, like, merch and a little bit of guitar teching. I didn't know too much about guitar teching. And, you know, so, like, I did what I could. Like, but, you know, Tom taught me some stuff, and Josh taught me some stuff, and, like, I was able to change strings and, like, tune the guitar and stuff like that. But Horse, like, he could do, like, setups and all that stuff.
Were you learning drums this whole time, or did you always play drums?
Yeah, so I always like had a desire to play drums, and I always like I would like air drum in my bedroom, and I always wanted to be a drummer. My parents were always like, there's no place to play, it's like loud, blah blah blah. They weren't very cool. They wanted me to play guitar because I could adjust the volume, you know.
Yeah.
They weren't very cool about the drums. So and my mom to this day, my mom like apologizes to me. It's really funny. She's like, I should have let you get a drum set. I'm sorry. I was like, whatever. I don't blame you. I would have sucked back then, and it would have been loud and obnoxious. but so when I went on tour with Bigwig, Matt would show me some, you know, just like sticking patterns and like different kind of exercises and stuff. And he had a set of these like weighted metal sticks. They were like warm-up sticks.
Yeah.
They were really heavy and a practice pad. And I didn't have a license the first like year or year and a half I toured with the band. I didn't have a license. And so on the long drives, I would just sit in the back of the van and play this practice pad with his warm-up sticks. And then when we would play shows, they were always the headliner most of the time. So they'd have the backline set up. And after the sound check was done, I'd go up there and jam out on the drums a little bit, you know. Oh, and I just kind of taught myself to play. I mean, I feel like I always had kind of a natural like feel for rhythm, you know. Like I don't ever remember like the first time I ever sat down at a drum kit, I was able to play like a simple beat. Like I didn't really have a problem with it. But like I've never taken lessons or anything like that. I basically taught myself to play drums in the back of the van, or at least awesome. Like to be in a band. You know what I mean? Like I learned how to be in a band from being on tour with them.
What was the first band you were actually in? Was it Jettison?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. The first real, like, yeah. I mean,
yeah, that was the first band that played shows.
Yes, it was Jettison.
Okay.
It was Jettison.
Yeah, that was you, Kevin, Steve, and then what's the bass player?
Dave.
Dave, that's right, Dave. Yeah.
It was actually, it was before it was that. It was me, Dan from Joystick, and this kid Tice that was in Outline at one point, and this kid Arthur that was in this band called Elmer's IQ from New Providence.
Wait, seriously?
That was the original lineup of Jettison, yeah. That was the original lineup. We recorded as Jettison, and we played 2 shows as Jettison with that lineup. And then
How'd you switch over where Steve became the lead
because
singer?
Artie left. We kicked Arthur out of the band because he I don't know. I think we thought he wasn't dedicated enough. It was so stupid. We were like 20 years old, And
He wasn't into the orgies that you guys were throwing.
Well, yeah, no. What happened was Dan was going to school in Hartford, Connecticut at the time, so Dan would drive back every weekend to practice, and Artie would flake. So then we were like, dude, Dan's driving back from school from Hartford, Connecticut to practice, and you're flaking, not cool, So we kicked him out, and what happened was we had a show booked 2 weeks later, and we were like, whatever, we'll just, Tice can sing, we'll let him sing, because Artie couldn't really sing anyway at the time. I wound up doing a lot of the vocals on our first demo. Me and Tice did it because Artie got in the studio and got drunk, and then he couldn't sing.
Oh my god!
And Dan can't sing to save his life, so it was left up to me and Tice. But anyway, so because I was friends with Steve,
airing all the dirty laundry, man.
Yeah, I don't care. Whatever.
It's gonna make this podcast good.
So Steve, because Steve grew up in Burnersville, Steve lived in Burnersville and I grew up, and that was my crew. We all hung out together.
Yep.
And LWL had just broken up, I think, but he was still doing small records. So when we did the demo, actually, without Steve came into Portrait with us when we did our first 3-song demo.
What's up? You guys recorded a Portrait?
Yeah, our first demo we did. Actually, all the Jettison stuff except for the last thing that we put out, we recorded at Portrait.
That's awesome, because my first interview was with Chris.
Yeah, I saw that. Cool. That's awesome. I love Chris.
Yeah, super nice guy. Okay, so you guys recorded there, then you disbanded with the original lineup,
we got Steve because we had a show booked, and when we kicked Arthur out, he got pissed off, and he was like, you guys can't play any of my songs. And most of the songs were his songs, and I was like, fuck it, let's just play the songs. I don't give a shit. And Tice was like, no, that's my friend. So I was like, all right. So then I asked Steve, yo, can you fill in for this show? But we only have 3 songs. And Steve was like, all right, I have 2 more songs that I've been working on that we'll play. But at first he was like, I don't want to be in the band. I'll fill in until you find someone. And then I think because he thought he didn't want to say right off the bat that he was going to be in the band because he thought that we didn't want him to write. But then once he realized that nobody else in this band can write songs, but they can play, we could play. So then he started writing songs and it went from there. And then Tice left and Dave joined, Dan left.
Yeah, because I think this all happened. I was living. So Laymeyer broke up. I moved to LA with Chris, which was kind of funny. And then I missed all of the early 2000s when pretty much. And I've said this in other episodes that I've recorded. It's that I feel right around 2004 is where shit completely dropped off and it totally changed. But there was a shift around 2000 where things just really started to shift. And by the time 2004 came, it was totally different and just not the same thing.
Well, so around 2000, yeah. So Jettison started. So I did the whole thing with Bigwig. That was 90, 98, 99, 2000, and then I started Jettison because I was I want to be in my own band. Fuck this. I like being on tour, but I want to play. Yeah. And so that started. So Jettison I think started in 2000. And I think I left the band in 2003. I'm gonna say.
And then you started. Then you went to Day at the Fair, right? Or
I went to Clark Street.
Oh, okay.
For I think I was in Clark Street for 6 months with Sean, or not with Sean,
Dave.
With Rob and Dave. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought Sean Bergen because we played it. The only show I remember playing with Clark Street was with Sean's old band. I can't remember the name of his old band. Sean Bergen's band.
Wait, Sean Bergen?
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah, Bergen.
Oh, he had a band that was from.
It was South. We played in South Jersey with some band that he was in.
Well, we met because he was in Day at the Fair for a minute. He roadied for Day at the Fair, then he played bass, and then they kicked him out. And
it was after they kicked him out. It was in another band.
Yeah, it was a band from Pennsylvania. So he used to drive 2 hours one way to practice with these guys.
Jesus.
But these were the funniest fucking dudes ever. We went out to party with him because when he left that band, I'd moved back and started Arcade Academy. So he joined that with Dan Ryan, and we also had like a revolving door of guitar players. Like it was like fucking Lane Meyer again.
Yeah, you guys did have a lot of guitar players.
But we went to party with those guys out in Pennsylvania, and it was hilarious, dude. They were
really,
oh man, they were fucking amazing. They were the story. I can't even repeat these stories, but they were like, they would just tell us this shit. And are you fucking kidding me? They're like, oh yeah, they're just this awful stuff, and it's so vague what I'm saying, but I just really can't repeat it.
But I know what you mean because I feel like I know a lot of people from Pennsylvania that are like that too, and I feel like especially back in the day, like as a kid, like going out to PA to play shows and meeting these like other bands and the things they would tell you, you're just like, what? You guys are fucking out of your minds.
Oh, 100%. You're like, what is with you guys? You're like, the stories are true. You're fucking weird.
Yeah.
Kentucky, the south of the north.
Yeah. Pennsylvania kids are crazy, man.
Oh yeah, dude. Especially Wilkes-Barre area. They were.
Oh yeah.
They were interesting people. Were you ever on the tours with Bigwig when? Actually, 2 things. One, they're kind of completely different questions, but one, I want to find out about Bigwig's stage presence and how they became so fucking insane live. And the other thing, I want to ask about Fletcher from Pennywise, and if you were ever on those tours.
I had a couple of experiences with Fletcher for sure.
Yeah, I heard that was nuts.
Yeah, he's pretty notorious. I mean, I never had any like crazy run-ins with him. Like I was kind of scared of him just because all the stories I heard. So whenever he was around, I kind of wasn't. You know, I was, but like I'd be like, I'm gonna go over here because I don't want this dude to fuck with me.
Yeah.
But he
was just like pound Jack and Cokes or like just Jack straight. I heard.
So there's this story where the first tour Bigwig did in Canada, I wasn't on. It was the Snow Jam tour. And they were the openers for the whole tour. And Pennywise, it was like Pennywise and AFI. There was like a ton of bands on it. I don't remember. It was like crazy. But so the funniest stories I heard from them is that so all the bands were staying at the same hotel. And Fletcher went down to the front desk at like 1 o'clock in the morning, drunk as hell. And he's like demanding the room numbers for all the other bands in the hotel. And the guy behind the desk is like, I'm not giving you the room numbers for the other bands. Like, why do you who the hell are you? You know, of course he's like, I'm in Pennywise, and the guy doesn't know. He doesn't care. So they're not like giving him the numbers, and apparently he picks the stapler up off the guy's like desk, and he starts stapling himself in the arm with the stapler. He's like, tell me the numbers of the rooms. I'm not going to stop stapling myself until you give me the room numbers. And apparently they called security or something like that. Shit. I don't know. But I actually have, I have a Fletcher story that really has nothing to do with Bigwig.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. So years after Bigwig, recently, like 10 years ago, I toured. I worked for this band. I don't really want to say who they are, but
okay.
I worked for them, and they were on Warped Tour, and Fletcher and Randy from Pennywise drunkenly wandered into their tour bus, thinking that it was NoFX's tour bus, and the guys in the band that I was working for didn't know who Fletcher and Randy were. So to them, it was just these two drunken rednecks walking into their tour bus. So a fucking full-on brawl ensued in the tour bus, and Fletcher got tased and dragged out of the tour bus by the cops. And like I wasn't there, right? And I heard about it like the next day, and I was like, oh my god, like how do you guys not fucking know who the fuck Fletcher is on Warped Tour? How do you guys not know?
They're the staple band.
Yeah, man.
This must have been Yellow Card.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
You don't say.
It's yeah. Because I don't want to say who it is, because if they hear it, they're gonna know who I'm talking about. But like, yeah. I don't want to make them. They're good dudes. Like I'm not trying to say anything bad. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the guys.
Oh no.
They're good dudes.
It's just more of a hilarious thing that they didn't know when they like started a brawl with this guy.
Yeah. It's like you're on Warped Tour with Pennywise. They're like the staple Warped Tour band. How do you not know? Like everyone on Warped Tour knows about Fletcher. I don't care how old you are. Yeah. These guys are a little younger, you know. So like I'll give it to them. They didn't grow up coming up with Pennywise and stuff, but like still, You're on Warped Tour. Everybody knows who Fletcher is. Everyone.
Yeah. It's like being on any metal fest show, and it's like you know who Ozzy is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fucking amazing.
Oh, so what was the other thing? Oh, Bigwig stage.
Yeah, like okay, when I first Bigwigs come up a lot in a lot of episodes, just because when I first saw them, it was in Bordentown, a pavilion in Bordentown. That's where we first met Boxcar, and then we met Bigwig because we were playing, and then we actually were a Congress account at this point.
Right.
So the Bigwig gets on, and it's these two minivans pull up with a ton of stickers all over, right? And I had heard about Bigwig because I'm asked Tom about this. But my buddy Bob, one time we were like getting like bagels or some shit at like 11 o'clock at night, and we were like, this is when I just started driving, so we were like smoking cigarettes in my car, eating the bagels in the G&A parking lot, and he goes, dude, I was at this show. I don't know why I just remembered that whole setting, but he goes, I was at this punk show, and there's this band, and there's a T-shirt, and it's a air freshener on the back, but it just says ass. I fucking lost my shit for about an hour. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was the funniest goddamn thing. So fast forward, we're playing a show, and he's like, yeah, it's his band Bigwig. I have no idea who they are. Fast forward, we're playing the show in Bordentown. Bigwig rolls up, two minivans, this tall dude gets out with dreadlocks. I'm like, what is this? And like, bands on tour, you can see that they're a touring band. It's in their skin and their clothes. Like you could just see the road in them. And then when they play, get on stage, there's just this bigger thing about them. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
There's
totally.
like no fear in their eyes. There's not like they just know what the fuck they're doing,
Yep.
And so these guys get on, I'm like, dude, these guys are like legit. And then I see this T-shirt. I'm like, oh my god, it's the fucking ass fucking air freshener band.
That's the band.
I was like, this is them. This is amazing. So I'm like, okay, this is funny. Then they get up and play and went like nuclear in front of like 20 kids in a pavilion on a Saturday afternoon at like 4 p.m. And I saw John play bass, and it changed like my life.
That's funny.
I literally I completely ripped my stage presence off like from him in the beginning, and then eventually just kind of figured out my own thing. But I completely just want to be them. So when I saw them play, I'm like, how do these guys go so? I've never seen this before. I've never seen a band go completely off like this. And it was one of those where I remember hearing about Newfound Glory used to have jumping practice in their thing, but it's like Bigwig, I feel like it was just an organic thing, or did they see bands that they were like, holy shit, we have to go off like these guys?
I think for those guys, I mean, I never saw it was definitely more of an organic thing, but I think everyone's kind of biting off somebody else, you know what I mean? Like, I'm 100%. Sure they're influenced. I wouldn't say they're biting off. I think they're taking influences. The Newfound Glory thing with the jumping contest, that's kind of funny. I've never heard that about them, but I've heard stuff like, someone saw the Jason from Strung Out, like posing in the mirror with like a fake microphone, like doing his poses and stuff like that, which whatever. But yeah, for those guys, I really think it was just like, and it was an organic thing, or as organic as it can be, I know like you were saying about John, and I'm pretty, and I think he'll verify this. He would back this up. He definitely like got a lot of his stage presence from what's Roger from Less Than Jake? Is that the bass player?
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah, like John,
the jacked up like really stiff upper shoulder thing that Roger.
Yep.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they toured with Less Than Jake as a young band.
Yeah.
They toured with Less Than Jake like when they were real young, and so I think that like John like took a lot of that from Roger, and I don't know, the other guys were obviously influenced. Like it was just Josh was just going off. Like I don't think Josh
his upside down right-handed guitar playing it lefty.
Yeah, first of all, that blows your mind.
And I saw that, and then actually at first I saw Newman from Boxcar. They played first, and he was playing his bass the same way, upside down.
Oh, right,
he
did.
And he didn't rearrange the strings, so he's playing with the E string is on the bottom and the G string is on top. And then all of a sudden Josh gets up and does the same thing. I'm like, was this like a trend? Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and then so it was just like, holy shit. It was just this whole thing, like, lead singer's got dreads. They're these two vans. They've got this hilarious T-shirt. This guy's playing his guitar upside down. The drummer's jumping in the air and hitting his cymbals like when they're jumping. I'm like, what is this spectacle that I'm fucking seeing right now?
And like I said, like it definitely was as organic as it can be. I mean, there definitely was there definitely was a concentrated effort by those guys to like put on a good show. It wasn't oh, that's just how we are. I mean, if somebody lacked, like somebody would say something to them, you know, like, yo, dude, you're all right. You just stood there tonight. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like there was definitely a concentrated effort to like go nuts on stage, but I think that like there was no practice as to what they were going to do. It was just like, we need to be energetic and we need to have a good stage presence. However you do that, fucking do it. But that's what has to happen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember we used to yell at Casey because sometimes he would just stand there and we'd be at the end of the show. We're like, Casey, you're like, you jumped around in practice and you were like having fun. Like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, whatever, dude. He was just like, you cannot talk Casey down. He just stands his ground. I was like, all right, whatever, man. It picked me off to no end.
It's definitely not something that, I mean, I can't act on stage when I'm playing. Like if I don't really go crazy on stage when I'm playing drums. I'm the drummer, and like I'm more worried about what I'm playing and what I look like. But I mean, I definitely couldn't. You know, I can't like act and go nuts. Like I have to feel it, you know. And I think that for those guys, it was the same thing. Like there was no acting there, you know. It's funny too. Like when we were younger, we'd give people shit for like not going off on stage, and now when we're like older in bands, like one person's going off too much, you're like, yo, chill out a little bit. Nobody else is doing that.
Yo, man, my back is killing me right now. Like, please stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we played some reunion shows and we like just got back in and played, and I'm looking at these videos and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I was this rail thin dude back in the day going ape shit, and now I'm like this fucking like overweight like mess on stage right now. I was like, this is awful for me to watch. I'm like, looks like my fucking stomach's just flopping all over the place right now.
Well, see, that's why I picked the drums, because like, you know, I can hide that shit decently behind the drums. Like, I'm not as fat as you think. Look, these are drums.
I'm just gonna stack the toms a little bit higher.
I play like a bigger dimension kick drum and bigger dimension toms so that it doesn't look like I'm huge over my drum kit, you know.
Yeah, we definitely learned. It's like either I go for more runs and stop drinking IPAs, or I decide to not do that.
I don't even drink, man.
Really?
No, not really. Once in a while.
No shit. I thought everyone basically.
No, I prefer the herbals.
Oh, I gotcha. The naturally grown. Oh, I hear you.
You know what? Like a few years ago, like I mean, I'll have a beer here and there, but like I don't get drunk or anything. Like I'm not, because the last time I got drunk, like I made a complete ass out of myself. It was like 5 years ago. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever blacked out and didn't remember things, and I was like, that's it, no more. That like really bugged me out, because I mean, dude, I have been shit-faced drunk before, and I remember everything I do, and that one time I didn't remember, and that really bugged me out. Ever since then, no more.
Feel like Monkey Man. I've never seen Zima have that effect on somebody.
Yeah, right. I drank. It wasn't Zima, man. It was those Seagram's wine coolers. Come on.
My bad. The fruit punch. I gotcha.
Yeah. Come on. Bartles and James.
Jesus Christ. What do you miss about like the scene?
I miss like seeing all these people every weekend, and like I miss going to see bands, and even like I miss being on tour a lot. Like I really miss being on the road. I love it. I wish I could do it for my life, for my career. Like I wish that's all I could do.
Why don't you just do that now? Like why don't you just find big bands and say, hey man, just fucking take me with you? Nah.
It's a lot. I'm also picky about like who I'll tour with too. Like I've had plenty of offers to like work for other bands that I didn't know personally, and I turned every one of them down because I was like, I don't want some asshole band to ruin the experience that I've had being on the road with bands. So like, I don't want to go work for some bunch of assholes that I don't know. And
was there a band that you said no to that you regret saying no to?
Maybe Midtown. Heath asked me to go out with them, and I turned them down.
Oh wow.
And it wasn't because I didn't know them. I knew them very well, obviously, but it was because I felt I'll say this, I don't really care now, but I thought Gabe would piss me off, so I didn't want to go on tour with him. That's why. And I told Heath that. I was like, I like Gabe, but I felt like if I was in a van with him, maybe it wouldn't work out too well, and I didn't want to like cause any friction with me and those guys. So
yeah, I've had that discussion on a couple interviews just about that. The one thing that we talked about was that, you know, Gabe knew what the fuck he was doing. Like
for sure,
he had a game plan, and I think that outside when he was in that world, I think a lot of people listening to this will really agree, but in that world, it's like we all saw that he knew how he could turn it into like a career. And I think that you're right. If you would have gone on tour, it would have been, all right, this is the structure, this is a business, or this is how we're gonna do shit. And I think for you, it sounded like it had to be, you know, organic but fun,
exactly.
You know, and it had to be like, hey man, this is a punk rock thing. This isn't a corporation we're trying to build.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of why, you know, and like I said, I did tour a band, like the one band I worked for, you know, 10 years ago, I met them through another, you know, the kids that were Senseless and they turned into Crash Romeo when they went on tour, I tour managed them because they were my friends and I was like, they're young, they didn't really know. So I was like, yeah, dude, like, I'll help you guys out. I'll go on the road with you. We went out for 3 months and we toured with this other band. And then after that tour, the other band called me up and was like, hey, dude, like, we need someone, you know, we thought you worked well with those guys. You want to come out with us? And I did, but I knew those guys, you know, and I knew they ran things a little differently, but like, I personally knew them as people and I could kind of deal with the way they ran things. Whereas, like you said, with a situation like that, you know, I didn't want to get into a situation where it was like a really businessy kind of situation where I felt like I was like working for someone as opposed to like being on the road, you know, like,
yeah,
I never asked for money from Bigwig. Like I did get paid towards the, like, I didn't get paid right off the bat. I was just stoked to be there. You know, it was like later on I asked for money when I realized that like, okay, like you can actually get paid to do this.
Yeah. Right.
So like, you know, but it was never much, and I never really cared. And my whole thing with them was like, you know, if you can pay me this, great. If not, just pay for my food and what I need when I'm on the road, and I'm good, man. Like, I was living with my parents at the time and stuff, so I didn't really have any like bills or overhead to worry about when I was home. And I just like being out on tour. You know what I mean? And it also took a lot of the responsibility off of me because if there was ever an issue, I could be like, well, you're not paying me, so fuck you.
Yeah, man, it's a lot being on the road. I mean, just like we went out for like, you know, 2.5 years on and off, and it just, the amount of bullshit that just 4 people in a band just go through internally.
Yeah. And
just to be someone on the outside looking at, I mean, I remember we had a roadie one time. It was our last tour, went on for about 2 months. This is when Fallon had joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
And we started off, I think it was like about 2 weeks in, or not, Christ, man, I think it was a couple days in. I remember Brian like took me aside. He's like, dude, he's like, you guys are a bunch of fucking little girls. and I was like, yeah, I know, because like me and Sean were always bickering, and then Casey was kind of a thing. But we got out to Chicago, picked up, we had one roadie, this guy, his buddy Anthony. We were dropping him off Chicago, so he flew to Jersey. We get to Chicago, we're like, shit, we need 2 roadies. Ended up going to this place called the Whipple House, where Rise Against, their singer, what's his face?
Tim.
Tim. So Tim was living there with Neil from Lawrence Arms.
Okay.
And a couple people. So we show up there, and someone's like, yeah, you can crash at this place. Like, we're punk rock band, stay. This is like right when Rise Against had just started. So
okay.
Tim's walking outside, like, oh, it's Tim. I'm like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Later on, they just like blow up. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, right.
And this guy Ryan and this girl Julia are there. And Julia goes, hey, I'm going to catch up with you guys in California, and Ryan will start with you guys out to California. We're like, great. Literally, dude, we got to California. It's like we broke Ryan.
Really?
Oh, dude, he was like the nicest, quiet dude. By the time we got to California, it was like we were like, what did we do to this poor guy? and we were just, I think he just couldn't deal with how much stress we put on ourselves. And it's just like he was like a shell of a man by the time we got to California. And luckily, Julia had toured as a roadie with like Midtown and other bands, so she knew how to handle it. But like, just like the whole point is really just like you have to really have a tough skin to be around everyone's
For
bullshit,
sure.
especially when you're not getting fucking paid. I mean, we would pay people, but if you weren't getting paid, like you have to really fucking love that.
For sure, yeah. I did and like I said, I did get paid towards the end, but at first it wasn't about money. You know, when they asked me to, when Josh asked me to go out with him the first time, like, and I'll say it to this day, I really think that like if he hadn't done that and like if they hadn't taken me on the road, I think my life would be so much different and probably not in a good way. I think I was probably heading down a not so good path at that point in my life. You know, those years in my life were rough, like my later teenage years, like my senior year in high school and like my later junior, senior year and stuff. I was kind of in a crappy place, you know, and I think that Josh saw that as well, being that he was around me so much and in my house and stuff like that. And I think he saw like that I needed to kind of get out of there. And, you know, that like doing that, like, I mean, changed my life, man. Like for real, changed my life. Like I said, I told you, like I got in trouble with the cops and stuff, like a little bit before that. And I think that I would have probably continued down that path with those people had Bigwig not taken me on tour and kind of taken me out of that situation for such long periods of time that eventually, like, you know, I learned like ethics and things like that from those guys from being on the road, like how to treat people and stuff. Those are good dudes. Like, wow. No matter what anyone says, like good people, you know, and the people that I was hanging out with when I was at home weren't so much, you know, so that's like awesome. Those dudes really and then, you know, even like after, like, you know, we did the one tour. I did the one tour. It was in Canada. It was us and Link 80. That was the first tour I went on. And it was like a 2.5 week tour or something like that. And it was crazy, dude. Like the shows were huge. Like it was nuts. But then after that, when we got home, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, that was fun. I never thought I would go again. And then, you know, a month later, they were like, hey, we're going out to California to record our next record. We don't have any shows, so we can't pay you, but you're more than welcome to come with us and just fucking hang out. So I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I don't care. I'll figure something out when I get out there for money. Like, of course, like stay in Basking Ridge or go to LA and record on Hollywood Boulevard with Bigwig. You know what I mean? It's like, so I did, and I went out, and then from there I just kept touring for like a long time, and it really like put me in another path.
That's awesome.
You know, than from where I was going. So for sure,
that's
like,
really cool, man.
Yeah,
that's like the first time I've had a story like this. Really, kind of. This is like the fifth interview I've done so far, and like I you know, as everyone's like it's super excited to like reminisce, but I haven't gotten that story yet where someone said how much. You know, really, and the whole point of this whole podcast is really just talk about the scene. But that's such
and
a
it
cool...
is the whole scene.
Yeah, but it started. But it was just like it was like a petri dish that just let people. These things happen where bands happened and friendships happened over music and
exactly, you
know, people went on to manage bands and people want to be roadies and things like that. But that's awesome that it got you out of that shit.
It did. And the only thing I'll say, the only negative thing I will say about touring is it took some of the, you know, when you're like 15 and you saw a band for the first time and you have that like feeling in you where it's just like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like,
yes.
After I went on tour, that kind of diminished a lot because I was so jaded to it because I saw so many bands every single night and it kind of like lost its like mystery to me. And
it lost
like,
its
you know
magic.
What I mean?
They weren't scary anymore when they got on stage. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, that was kind of a negative, but still, I wouldn't change anything, man. But, like, that's one thing I do miss. And there's been very few bands that have, like, I'll tell you what, dude, when I went to see Jawbreaker last week or whatever it was, that was I got that feeling for the first time in a really long time, and that was cool. But, like, that's Jawbreaker, you know? It was a band I'd waited 20-something years to see.
No, I think actually it's funny too because I talked to Anthony last week and I would ask him because all my Facebook all the feed was just the photo of the backdrop that just said Jawbreaker and every one of my friends or people I know from Jersey were like all there and I'm like I wonder if you guys were all talking to each other because like you guys you know because like Ricky posted a photo, Katie Kitchell posted a photo.
I posted a photo.
You had a photo up there. My buddy Bob, he went to it with my buddy Luch. Like everyone.
I think I went on the night where like nobody went.
Oh,
Like
really?
I went on like Tuesday. Everybody else that I knew either went Monday or Wednesday. I went on Tuesday.
I love that we're living in a time with all these bands that we literally idolize that we didn't get to see because they had broken up. We've literally
Yeah.
got to see it. Like I got to see Sunny Day Real Estate play with the original lineup. I got to see,
Oh, I never got to see that.
dude, it was unbelievable. It was so fucking incredible. And I was just like the whole time I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, and that feeling had come back where you're right. It was that I feel like I'm going to a show for the first time because I think the thing was actually another band too who was the Refused. They were incredible.
Yes.
That show was insane. And you guys got to see Snapcase, but we had seen Snapcase like back in the day. Like everyone.
You were at the
I wasn't there, but I remember you and
show?
Kevin. No, you and Kevin. There's that photo of you guys like in the front.
Oh yeah, that show that was at like Irving Plaza. I don't remember where that was. That was the Snapcase reunion show.
Yeah.
But I had also seen Snapcase. Actually, I got to see Snapcase every night for like 3 weeks.
That was because you guys
with them. That was fucking awesome. Like
amazing.
that was like that was the one tour where I was just on the side of the stage every night with my mouth like dropped, and I was just like I couldn't even like talk to those dudes half the time because I was like, you're so good. like for real, like that was the one. Because like, so for me, like I grew up in like the NJPP scene and like all the bands, but I also really loved like hardcore and New York hardcore and all that stuff. So like when those paths crossed, as they did sometimes when I was on tour with Bigwig, I was so stoked, man, because it was like I never got to go on tour with bands like Snapcase when I was with Bigwig. Not that I didn't like the bands we toured with, but it was awesome to like.
There's a big difference though. I mean, there's a huge shift in scene because I was. When we started playing, I mean, I was big into, like you said, you were in the metal band stuff. Like Tool was my favorite band, and I liked really hard, heavy stuff. I still to this day I love the heavy stuff, but the pop punk stuff, it was just kind of all right. I guess I'll play this, and I liked it. But those shows
what it was for me.
Oh yeah, it was like, okay, well this is more accessible, this pop punk thing, because it's here and I get to play in it.
Exactly.
But then there's this hardcore scene where I just go to see, like I'll pay the money to go see that.
Yeah, I was like a anonymous in that scene, which was fine with me because I would just go and watch the bands and like then I would go home, and all my friends were at the other shows, like the pop punk shows, which I also liked the bands there too. But it was
it's like
so
you were friends with those
me.
bands, like you had
exactly.
There was no wall between you and those bands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I think that's why the hardcore scene for me like was kind of me being able to still keep some of that like wall and mystery to those bands because I knew everyone personally in the pop punk scene. So like as much as I like the music and stuff, you're right. It's hard to be like a really legitimate fan of a band when you're friends with everyone in the band, like because I feel like it just kind of takes a little bit away from it, like dude, my friends are some of the most talented people I know, like. And I'm a huge fan of all their bands, but not in the sense where like, I wouldn't pay $100 to go see Bigwig in 15 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's different.
No, see, you're the first person I think I've ever talked to about this who actually said what I've thought for so many years. Like when we started going to shows, I mean, we'd see, was it Jimmy Eat Worlds? Like they were on tour with Promise Ring at Coney Island High and Jets to Brazil.
I remember that. Yeah.
I remember they were late because they were seeing Jets to Brazil in Jersey, and like they had like 3 songs they could play, and everyone was pissed off.
Yeah.
But those shows, like we'd go to them, and we hadn't started touring yet, so I looked at these guys, I'm like, how they're like gods to me, And because you listen to Static Prevails, and all of a sudden they're in front of you, and you're like,
yep.
We didn't have YouTube to watch them play live whenever we wanted to. It was just they're in front of you, like holy shit, that's the guys from the album art,
Yeah, totally.
They're playing my favorite fucking song, but then when you started playing shows, it was then when I started getting on stage, or when you were on stage helping a band, and then when you started playing in drums and bands. When you're up there, it's the magic that you don't know of it becomes real, and it's like,
right.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thought there was like this cool green room thing that these bands were in, but they actually were there was no green room, or it's like sucked.
Yeah, exactly. And even like I've even had experiences where like I'm not gonna say who it was, but there's been bands that like I was a fan of the band, and then I met them, and I was not a fan of them as people, and it totally ruined the band for me. I couldn't even like listen to the band anymore because I couldn't like even the guy's lyrics, like that meant so much to me. Like I'm just like, you're so full of shit, like you're an asshole in real life, like you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it like totally ruined it for me, and that was a rarity, but you know that definitely happened.
Yeah, I think the only person, like, I mean, because me and Barker are still really good friends, but he'll still write songs, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude, like, how did you think of that? So I kind of...
Yeah, he's such a good writer.
I know. We were talking to Josh Humble recently on one of the interviews, and we were just, like, geeking out about, like, him and Chris have such a... Like, they never see each other, but they have such a, like, man crush on their music for each other. That he hears each other's rights. I remember the two of them... Like Josh was saying that he had something out, and then Chris had texted him like, "Dude, that's so amazing! The music's so fucking good, you know."
Yeah.
So there's still that respect there of you're friends and you can still appreciate it. But yeah, man.
I always thought Chris was a great songwriter, always.
Oh, dude.
And when it was actually really funny when me and Kevin like joined Day at the Fair briefly, like Chris was like, "Oh," he's like, "I have a couple new songs that I've been working on. I have them demoed. Like I'll send them to you. It's just recordings on my phone." So I'm like, okay. So he sends like one track and it's just acoustic, like whatever. All right, cool. The next track he sends is it's him like singing for like a measure, and then it just stops. He's like, okay, you guys write the rest. And me and Kevin are just like, what? Like what?
Yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, here's the hook. Just build something around it, but the hook will be the main part. You're like,
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
Like, whoa, what the fuck? I don't know. I'm a drummer, and like I can't write. Kevin does, he's still trying to learn the songs that you already have.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is just like seeing how weird that songwriters really are. You know, and like once you see that too, you're like, oh wow, you're actually really fucking weird. You know?
Yeah. No, it's totally true, for sure.
Yeah, but man, I really appreciate you taking the time to fucking talk, dude. This is awesome.
I really appreciate being included in this. It was awesome. I thought the idea was awesome right when you first said it, and when you asked me to do it, I was stoked. So hell yeah, dude.
That's awesome, man.
I love doing stuff like this. Like, not that I've done anything like this, but I love like, I think I told you that. I was like, I love like historical stuff about like music scenes and stuff like that. So I think it's really cool.
Well, maybe this will prompt you to do, I don't know, get more back into something like this. Maybe also next Facebook post, you're like, hey guys, I'm going on tour right now. You're like, yes.
Well, I mean, I am playing still in Red Hymns, like we're doing stuff. So
yeah, it's a band with Jeremy, right?
I'm keeping busy. Yeah, Jeremy and Rob that was in Clark Street is also our bass player.
That's awesome. Yeah,
so I'm still playing, man, keeping busy.
Good, man.
The touring life doesn't pay the bills for an almost 40-year-old dude. So
yeah, it didn't do that ever.
No, I know, but it didn't matter then because we had our parents to take care of us, or at least I did.
Yeah, we all did.